Right. Good afternoon. I can officially say that it is 12 o'clock here Eastern Standard Time. Good morning to those who are joining us in the Central time zones. We're so thankful that you could join us today. Pretty excited. Students with disabilities, behavior, and discipline working together to reduce criminal justice involvement. And we are so thankful to be partnered with P&A for this webinar today. We are going to jump right in, and I am going to let our guest speaker, Whitney Hayes, tell us a little bit about herself and P&A.
Thank you. My name is Whitney Hayes. I'm with, as Ed was telling you, I am with Kentucky Protection and Advocacy. We are the federally funded agency that provides legally based individual and systemic advocacy and education to all Kentuckians with disabilities. Every state has a protection and advocacy agency. We provide information referral services, technical assistance, and sometimes we can do full representation. We also provide some trainings, and we're funded by 7 grants, primary 7 grants. We recently just got an 8th grant called the Protection and Advocacy for Beneficiaries for Social Security. But I listed on here the main grants that we were that we focus primarily on. And next slide.
And at this time, I'm going to ask Rhonda to introduce herself and tell a little bit about Kentucky-SPIN.
Thank you. Well, and just know that I'm not being rude with the camera off today. I'm having a little bit of issues, but we're going to roll with it. I'm with Kentucky-SPIN, Kentucky Special Parent Involvement Network. And first and foremost, I'm a sister. 3 of my siblings have disabilities from the seen to the unseen. I also have OCD. My 3 siblings had IEPs in school. And also I'm the proud foster adopted mom for the greatest gift of my life. We truly are families helping families at Kentucky-SPIN. We do have, through the U.S. Department of Education, under the Individuals with Disabilities Education Act, or IDEA, which you're going to learn more about from Whitney here in a little while, we are the Parent Training and Information Project and have been since Kentucky first received one back in 1988. Our whole goal is not to do it for you, but to provide the training, information, and support through peer support for children and youth with all types of disabilities, birth through 26, their parents, families, and professionals. You know, one of the things I think is very important to share is what we don't do as much as what we do. We are not attorneys. We do not legally represent families in meetings, but we are there through peer support to help step through the process, access to information, and the support that you need. I'm going to hand it back to Whitney, and Whitney's going to share with us some statistics that I think is going to be very important for you all to keep in mind as we're talking about the involvement in the judicial system.
So this project has become a kind of one of my passions, because as we started research, as P&A started researching it, we found out that students with disabilities, although they make up, like in Kentucky, 17% of the enrollment, the law enforcement referrals from 2017, 2018, from the they were making up 26% of those law enforcement referrals and 29% of the arrests. This information is coming from the Office of Civil Rights Education Department, and they update that information every 3 or 4 years. So this is the most recent information that we have from the Office of Civil Rights. And then to give you some more information, I think we're going to go to the next slide, because Kentucky Department of Education has posted some information on its website. And this information is based on students with disabilities who have IEPs, which are individualized education programs. Sometimes people call them plans, only. And again, this is from the school year of 2022 and 23, and it still shows some disproportionality in regards to 17% of the population, total population, are students with disabilities. There's 27% who have SRO involvement, and then 26% have had charges filed against. And for individuals who may not know, the CDW, the Co-Designated Worker Program, helps process the charges. Sometimes the students do not have to go before judges, and that 29% of those kids have had some CDW, and slowly it creeps up, and then eventually, and 40% have had arrests. These are based on only the events. The slide I showed you before was not based on events, so they're looking solely at what an event is at that time. So, yeah.
So what are we seeing that's leading to the judicial involvement? Well, there's a variety of things. And again, every situation is unique and individual, just like our children are. But we're seeing a lot of things where the children are not showing up to school. There are chronic absenteeism. And when we look at chronic absenteeism, that is excused and unexcused. So for unexcused absences, though, many times that there may be charges filed, truancy charges, because the child's not been going to school. Well, the issues that are leading to that, many times it's informal removal. If the child was suspended, that would count as an unexcused absence. Informal removals. We have many of our families that are being told to pick the child up from school. Not that they have been suspended or any other actions taken place. And what's very important about that is we need to make sure that those informal removals are documented, because the child can't go to school if we're told that we have to send them home. So there's a lot of things playing a role. Some of our children are overwhelmed. They are depressed and they are struggling with their mental health and not able to go to school. The other thing, the other side of it, outside of truancy charges, maybe if there was an incident that occurred, that a charge was filed against them. Now, one of the things I do want to talk a little bit about here is, we can back up just a minute, Amber. When we're looking at this, charges being filed on a student should be a last resort. The things most of the general public believes that it has to be something horrendous for a charge to be filed. We're actually finding the exact opposite, and wonder if even charges being filed was an appropriate course of action. Did the school follow their own policies and procedures? And we're going to dive a little deeper, especially for children with disabilities, where there's some things that took place. But there's a whole variety of reasons a child may have the charges. But again, we want to encourage that should be a last resort. Again, not that they should not be held responsible for their actions, but we need to ensure that we're doing everything we can before it gets to that level, because that's where we're seeing the big gap is. It's not that this just happened overnight. In the majority of situations, there have been things that have led us to this and missed opportunities of getting the supports in place that would have totally took us on a different track than heading towards the charges. So on the next slide here, I wanted to, the U.S. Department of Education on November the 19th, through the Office of Special Education and Rehabilitation Services, OSER, and the Office of Elementary and Secondary Education, they issued some guidance, which we'll talk about a little bit more, and you can always click on the link here to be able to go to that. But I took an expert out of that Dear Colleague letter so that I could show you all, because this is another thing that we are finding playing a huge role for students with disabilities and students of color that is leading to the disproportionality of them being represented. It's critically important to note that research demonstrates that one's perceptions about a student's behavior can be the result of implicit bias rather than the student's actual behavior. Therefore, addressing any implicit bias and how the student's behavior might be perceived or classified should be a part of state and local efforts to create an inclusive and supportive learning environment. And we'll talk a little bit more about the functional behavior assessment, that the guidance that was issued in this, but let's just stop for a moment and think about this, is how a lot of what we're not hearing talked about is everything that's playing a factor in it, even outside of the kids' behavior, right? Was the adults' behavior that were around them, was it appropriate? We're seeing a lot of behavior in the adults in this situation that may not necessarily be appropriate. And so really addressing all that, is it, all of us have lived through a very hard time since COVID and beyond. But we've got to make sure that everybody has the mental health support that they need, and what actions took place when before that behavior took place. So there's a lot of things that play a part in it, and we just want to bring awareness to, you've got to work on the issue rather than just the result of it. And we're going to go here on the next slide and look a little deeper here. So when we talk about the behavior is, behavior could be negative or positive, right? Obviously, what we're concentrating on is the negative behavior. The number one thing to keep in mind is the behavior is communication. It should be, it is setting off a red alarm, something's going on. Most of the time, it has nothing to do with the actual behavior that took place, right? What they did. So what we have to do to change that behavior is see what's causing it. The behavior is the symptom. Starting to understand, and a lot of times it's very hard to get down to what it is that's bothering them. Is it they're overwhelmed? Do they not feel that they are respected or valued? Is it that they are confused? Many times you'll see negative behaviors done to try to distract you from, they're not able to actually do the academic work because they're struggling with it. So what is, are they avoiding doing the work? All of those different things, you've got to see what is the cause of it. On the next screen here, you'll see one of the wonderful tools that we have available in Kentucky, and it is evidence-based practices, response to intervention, or RTI. In Kentucky, ours is called Kentucky MTSS, Multi-Tiered System Support. This is Kentucky's response to intervention. So what does that mean? This is a way to quickly get support in place for all children, not just children with disabilities, all children when they need some intensive support. On the next screen you'll see here is it could be because of behavior. It could be because of academics. It could be because of social emotional. If you see in the center where you have the triangle, the tier delivery system, most of the time, everybody is very quick to put into place when a child is struggling the academics, right? It's very clear they're struggling in reading, they're struggling in math. But we see such a delay in putting the interventions in place when it has to do with behavioral and social emotional. Because if we could get those in place as quickly as we do for the academics, we are going to avoid a lot of the situations that then lead to judicial involvement. Another key thing on this next slide is their families and schools partnership is a huge component of this. Families are critical to the success of this. Looking at how do we provide equal access and opportunity? What are the behavioral, social, emotional, or academic support? Any parent can request this response to intervention, Kentucky MTSS, if you feel that your child is struggling. Because the sooner, especially if they're having issues with the behavior, social, emotional, or academic, the sooner we can get these supports in place, the better it's going to help them. Now, on the next slide here, we're going to see the question of, does the child need an IEP or a 504 plan? An IEP is Individualized Education Program, which Whitney is going to talk more in depth here in a minute, because the other things that we're seeing is they either haven't been identified and have an IEP or 504. If they do have them, then the IEP or 504 is not being implemented as it's written, or the IEP or 504 does not adequately support their current needs, especially in relation to behavior. On the next slide here, you'll see, here's where we're going to get into the functional behavior assessment. Now, if you remember the quote I read a little bit ago, that was that new guidance. One of the great things about this, the functional behavior assessment and behavior intervention plan is an evidence-based practice. And this has been around and been used for students with disabilities for a long time. In that new guidance, the U.S. Department of Education issued, they encouraged it not just to be used for students with disabilities, but for all students, because it is a successful evidence-based tool that can help any child. And these are especially going to be important to help when there are the behaviors that the child is having. With the functional behavior assessment, we're going to look at, and we'll go to the next screen here just a second. With these, we're going to look at some of the behavior intervention plans that then is a written plan based on the findings of the functional behavior assessment and will be in place. Again, we are trying to look at the positive behavior plan, right? We want to replace the negative behaviors with positive ones. And so you'll see a couple of the tools that we've developed to kind of help step through the process here on the next slide. The functional behavior assessment and the behavior intervention plan. As families and providers and educators, you're critical members of this team, and so is your child, because it's important, no matter how good of a plan that you all develop with behavior intervention, if it's not what the child wants or going to do, it's not going to work, right? The student is a critical part of this. So looking at, when you look at the functional behavior assessment, we identify and define the behavior that's happening. Collect the data. Here's what's important is they're going to be observing and looking at when the behavior occurs and when it doesn't occur. So we can see, all right, well, it's not happening over here in math class, but it's happening in reading. So what's going on in math class that maybe we could duplicate, or what's going on in reading where this behavior is occurring? Then you're going to analyze and then develop the behavior intervention. These are going to be critical tools, and just like you can request a multi-tiered system support, you can request the functional behavior assessment and the behavior intervention plan. And the sooner we get these things in place, again, just like the multi-tiered system support, the response to intervention, the better it's going to help our child. Now, I will tell you is all of these you can have the multi-tiered system support, functional behavior assessment, and be being evaluated under which Whitney will share more here in a little bit. One isn't to replace the other. They can help and support one another. On the next slide here, I'm going to hand it over to Whitney. First, I want to pause just a moment just to see if anybody has any questions or any comments they'd like to share. You can use the chat.
I'm not seeing anything in the chat yet, Rhonda.
Okay, wonderful.
Okay, I'm gonna take it over now. So Rhonda's gone through about what we're seeing, some, what we need, what some steps we could take. I'm gonna address like what school systems' legal obligations are to their students and ways the parent can use the law to help get the process of addressing the child's behaviors. I think next slide. So the first things we need to look at the 3 laws that address discriminatory behaviors. We got the ADA, of course, is the overarching non-discriminatory law passed in the 90s. But the primary law we're going to speak today about is called the Individual with Disabilities Education Act. And then you've also got Section 504 with the Rehabilitation Act, which is also a non-discriminatory law. Any child with a disability who doesn't qualify for an IEP or an individualized education program may qualify for a Section 504 plan, but I'm going to get into that later. So if we can move on to the next slide. Yeah. So the IDEA says that every school must provide a free and appropriate public education to a child with a disability under IDEA. And so how do you, how can we get that IEP or special education? You can do a special education for a parent can do it. Teachers can provide it. I know under the CDWs and the Senate Bill 200, they created the Family Accountability Intervention Response Team. That could be a recommendation that if you have a child that comes forward to you, and they may have a disability, and they may not have been referred for an evaluation, you may say that may be a recommendation. One of the things that you're looking at for referral is that, and I'm going to point this out, that the student is able to progress emotionally or socially or developmentally. A lot of times people look at it academically, but like if a child isn't able to progress, it's not getting along with their peers well in school, or is acting out in ways, negative ways, because they don't know how to manage their emotions. That may be a little guidepost that, okay, we may need to do a special education referral. Anybody, it could include kids who are gifted in one subject area, but who need extra help in another. I've had situations where I've heard, my child does wonderful. They make A's and B's in class, but they get in fights. Like, have they done a special education, an IEP referral? No, I would recommend to go ahead and do that. And let's go slide. And this is, where I said it could be made by school district personnel or parents. I would recommend that it be put in writing and given to the district's director of special ed. A lot of times, if things are done verbally, then you don't have a record that it's been completed. And I know sometimes we all lose things this way. If we have it in writing, we have a lot, it's not lost. I would also keep a copy for yourself too, to show that you've done it. If somebody says, oh, that hasn't happened, here's a copy. And when I say in writing, it can also be in an email to the director of special ed. After you make the referral, the school has 60, an ARC will meet the school, and then the ARC will have 60 school calendar days to do the initial evaluation. And I put it in school calendar days. So if they miss because of snow, holidays, those days don't count toward the evaluation. So after the initial evaluation is completed, the ARC will meet again to determine if the child qualifies for an individualized education program. And some of these, this is a list of categories of in which a child may qualify. I'm trying to think. Mental disability, emotional behavior disability for those individuals who just don't know how to can't manage their emotions. Sometimes you have kids who have multiple disabilities that may qualify under that. A lot of times too, when you do an evaluation, I've seen sometimes that schools will evaluate for one category, and they may find that the child's not eligible for that category, and then the parent needs to go back and request, have we looked at this at another at EBD to see if there's a problem, if they would qualify under that issue category. And then next slide. After the determination of eligibility, group of individuals come together to develop, review, or revise the student's IEP. In Kentucky, that team's called an admission review committee, or ARC, or ARC. those terms are used interchangeably. If you go outside of Kentucky and you say those terms, other individuals who are involved in special education may not know what you're talking about. I've had that happen too. So, because in other states they just simply call them IEP teams. And next slide. So who's invited in this hour? The child, it meets certain criteria. If the child is in the 8th grade, 14 or older, or appropriate. I usually recommend that sometimes the child comes in and says, hey, I'm little Johnny, and then they leave. So they know what's going on in the process. A parent, a special ed teacher, a regular ed teacher, and somebody who's for the district who's supposed to be making decisions. And then you also can invite anybody with specialized knowledge about the child. I'm gonna call him little Johnny through the process. I've also seen situations where a child may be, after they qualify for an IEP, they may only have a special ed teacher, and in those situations, a regular ed teacher may not be included sometimes in those ARCs. So, next slide. So, and this is some Office of Special, here's some guidance. The ARC should identify how the schools will provide the special education and related services. Special education is a service. It is not a place. So I have had a lot of calls where people will call me and they say, my child needs to be put in special ed. Right, but special education is not a place, it's a service. I've had clients where the child didn't even know he was in special ed because of the way that the school was, his classes were structured. So that's what you need to start focusing on first, is saying, okay, what services does my child need in the IEP? And that is special education. The ARC meetings can occur in a variety of situations, variety of settings. Virtual, during the pandemic, I know a lot of ARCs happen virtually. I was part of one. In person, a hybrid, by phone. I've had sometimes I feel like sometimes they're much more productive if you're in person, but I can understand when situations occur that you can't do it virtually. And you can't do it in person, so you need to do it virtually or by phone. And so those situations, just know that those opportunities are available. And then the parent can call an ARC whenever they want to. So if you go into an ARC and something happens in a virtual ARC, you can step out and say, okay, maybe I need to go back and look at it and see if we need to do in person. Okay. It just, the only thing that the ARC has to occur, it has to occur at a mutually agreeable time and place. I've had times when parents have said, I wanted the ARC before Christmas. And the school's like, I can't do it before Christmas. And they've come back and told me, but they said they couldn't have it. No, it has to occur at a mutually agreeable time and place. So you need to say, okay, can we have it after Christmas? What dates are you available? And I think, yeah, we've gone through that. And now I think we've gone through that. I think we can go through the IEP sections. So the different IEP sections. An individualized education program or plan is made up of several sections. This is a list of them. It's important to know, I would focus on consideration of special factors is where you find the behavior intervention plan. The present level, and I'm going to go through each of these, but the present levels of academic achievement and performance is our first section. I think that's the next slide. It's a summary of how your child is currently doing. And looking at the disability and how it affects it in this current environment and how it involves the current curriculum. So you want to put it rich in achievement, rich in information with supporting data. So if the child has been suspended numerous times, you need that in there. If the school, somebody's called you at school called you from school to pick him up and have not called it a suspension, I would suggest putting that in there. If he hits, bites, kicks, okay, that's, put that in there. If there's a trigger, if there's a personality trigger, like for example, if my personality causes child to get upset. What is it about my personality that triggers him? I would put that specific fact in there, not focusing on me, but focusing on what's triggering him. So if I was his teacher, I would know, okay, I can't, if I yell and that's triggering, I could go, okay, I don't need to yell. I need to watch my, or I need to make sure I'm not raising my voice at all. One point. So you've got to remember, this is the starting point that the ARC has to write the goals, provide the services, and plan. And part of that plan is addressing the behavior plan. What do we need to do to look? What needs to be included in that behavior plan? And what we can go from there. And we can go on communication. Is it receptive? Is he nonverbal? Are they, do they looking under social and emotional needs? There's a section on that. And I'm going to point this out. Interpersonal behavior and skills, sensory self-regulation, emotional behavior, organization and executive skills. I've seen a lot of calls where kids or students have a lot of executive functioning skills and need help with those. And that manifests through their behavior. So what do? That needs to be put in the present levels in that specific section. Independent living skills, if they have problems with their independent living skills. And you're looking at it again, at this moment, things can change. Next year, it may be a whole different ballgame. Something can happen, and one of these could become weaker, or one of these skills could be stronger. Next steps in the IEP process. So you consider special factors. And that's like the way you consider, okay, do we need a behavior plan? Do we need to do what's called a functional behavior assessment? That's the evaluation of the specific behaviors that's causing the specific behaviors that is causing the negative. That's causing negative actions. They set goals. If they have a behavior plan, they should have a behavior goal. Determine what aids, supports, and services are needed to be provided. What programs and supports and modifications the school staff needs. That's why you have some of the school personnel there, some of the district personnel to make decisions about where the resources are, how are we going to provide these resources. And this is the last thing. Determine where the services should be received. Legally, a child with a disability should receive his education with his non-disabled peers as much as possible. So when you go to the ARC, you're not starting out with he's in special ed. You're starting with he's in a regular ed classroom with his non-disabled peers. There might be something in his IEP that they can't provide in that regular ed classroom. But and then they may have to remove him. But at that point, it may be part regular ed, part special ed. But we have to wait to see what he needs first. And again, I'm going to stress this: special education is not a place; it's a service. And so when a school cannot provide, so there's a child with a disability is supposed to attend the school that he would attend if you weren't disabled. Now, there may be a time when you go into the ARC and the school may not have a sensory room, but that should not prevent this district from providing that service. They should say, okay, this school has that service, has that sensory room, and that at that point, the child may be moved to that school because the ARC has decided that's where the service is needed. I think I'm going into behaviors now. So behaviors, manifestation of a disability. So it says a student can be suspended up to 10 days before the school has an ARC. However, again, a parent can call an ARC whenever they want. I usually recommend that every time a child is suspended, you get the suspension notice and you go through the IEP to make sure, and behavior plan to make sure that it was followed, that behavior plan was followed. And you may want, and you can call an ARC at that point to say, hey, what happened? you can't do anything about the suspension, but you can make sure that the IEP is followed. Do we need to add something to make it as easy, to improve things for each, for the school, for your child, for anybody. After 10 days, the school will have an ARC to determine if the school's behavior is a manifestation of their disability. It can be called a manifestation determination hearing, or a manifestation determination ARC, manifestation determination admission release committee. A lot of names. But at that point, too, if they have decided they had to go through the process, if the behavior is a manifestation of their disability, that behavior will not be held against the child. However, if it isn't, then the school can go forward with the regular education discipline proceeding.
Whitney, we do have a question. Do you want to pause for a moment to answer that before
Go ahead.
moving on?
That'd be great.
Perfect. With the new guidance from the Department of Education on having the information on functional behavioral assessments, how do you overcome schools when they say they're already doing things like a functional behavioral assessment, so they don't need to actually do the assessment now?
I would ask them in the ARC. Rhonda, so I would ask them in the ARC if they could provide the functional behavior assessment and go through the information. So if it's, because the functional behavior assessment is supposed to be looking at one specific behavior. It could look up to 3, excuse me. It's looking at for specific behaviors. So if they are saying, well, we are already conducting it, first of all, I would want to see what they're, the ARC needs to look at that. And it needs to be put in the file. We are already conducting it. And then from there, I would go from there. I would say, okay, could we give weekly updates about what we've done? Can we go through the data that's been created at this point, that's been looked at? Does that answer the question?
Yeah, and I think one thing that I've noticed too, Whitney, is many times there has been one done, so many things have changed, and it's not adequately right now for the issues or concerns that they're having, adequately representing where they currently are, or the behavior intervention plan. It could be that you also need to go back to the drawing board. You may not need a new functional behavior assessment if it gave a true picture of where they currently are. But the positive behavior plan, it may be that you need to go back to the drawing board to develop an updated behavior intervention plan, because if it's not working, then something's going on. One thing too is through the process, the functional behavior assessment, parents' input is critical, and also with the behavior intervention plan. So just like Whitney said, I would encourage that it be discussed and gone through, maybe even look at what were the findings, like Whitney said. Do you as a parent feel that this is given a true picture, what's missing, and then go from there about updating the plan?
Go ahead.
I think that works because I'm not seeing anything else to follow up in the chat. Thank you, ladies.
If they have further questions, just feel free to email one of us, and we can let follow up too. So,
well, I'm sorry, we did have another question pop in right as I said that. Can a parent request a manifestation of determination meeting before the 10 days?
Yes. But it does not, but they do not, the whole point of the suspension, I requested manifestation determination before the 10 days in cases. However, it didn't take, they could still suspend the child, but we wanted to follow, in those cases, I think we wanted to follow up to make sure the IEP was being followed. Because if they didn't follow the IEP, there was a violation right at that point.
Thank you, Whitney. So that would also, so the slide says 10 days of suspension, but does that include 10 days of in-school suspension? And would that change the LRE?
It depends. I've seen some KDE information that says that remove from the classroom could be a change of placement. However, I cannot see, I haven't seen a case where you removed a child and put him in school suspension for such a long period of time. It's been up to 10 days. I would be like, so here's the situation in that case. I would call an ARC each, if you think it's been 10 days, and go over the in-school suspensions in the ARC and say, isn't this a change of placement? Because the whole point of the suspensions is they don't want to make sure that that district is illegally changed placement.
So it has to be a continuous 10 days.
Well, no, because under Kentucky law, there is a law that says a pattern of behavior. Federal law does not say that, but state law does.
Thank you so much, Whitney.
So what if the student doesn't qualify for an IEP? That this has been. Ask for a 504 meeting and determine whether they qualify for a 504. The 504 is a non-discriminatory law. It was, and I'm going to go through back of who qualifies for 504, which is based off of Section 504 of the Rehabilitation Act. And that says a student who has record of a disability or is regarded as having a disability. Regarded as having it means it can also be there's a perception that you have a disability, and you may not have a disability, but they perceive you as having one. Sometimes I have seen school districts take the evaluation for the IEP to determine eligibility for a 504 plan. I've also seen school districts take the doctor's evaluations for and said yes to use as a 504 plan. That's all based on the district. The 504 plans provide accommodations that the students should receive in the classroom. So what are accommodations? I'm going back into class. Yeah. So here are the qualifications. Your student's disability must substantially limit one of his major life activities, such as learning, thinking, concentrating, emotional or mental learning disability. And those are the primary ones I think may impact our individuals. Next slide shows some accommodation examples: extra time on test, homework in class, special seating. You could have special pencils, anything like that. And individuals with a 504 plan can also have a behavior plan. So I've had clients who've may not qualify for an IEP, qualified for a 504, started having behaviors, and then we said, okay, we need to go ahead and evaluate them for a functional behavior, for a 504 behavior plan. Anybody else? Got questions?
Not seeing any pull through yet.
Well, and you can always, on the next slide here, We also have Kentucky Protection Advocacy and Kentucky, well, there's a lot of resources that we put here too that would help you on the next two slides. But then at the end here, we have, if you need individual assistance with either agency, there is here on the next couple of slides, there is an online form that you can fill out for both of us, or there is the 800 number.
And if you contact Kentucky P&A, somebody will call you back within 3 business days.
We do have a couple questions. The first question is 504 plans. Do you have to have a meeting like an IEP to get it established?
In my experience, yes.
Yeah, because you all would all be critical members to the input in for the evaluation and for the 504. So that would be critical time as a parent and the students where you can give your input into it. It may be that you can go ahead and write the plan at the same time, but you know, having that meeting is going to only help so everybody's voice is heard.
And then another question came in. Can I get a link to this recording to view later?
Yes, we will have, once we have it accurately closed captions, it will be on our YouTube channel, and we will share it through, share it out through our e-news and also on our website. So once that's done, again, you'll have to give us a little bit of time, but it'll be on our YouTube channel as well and on our website.
We do have a few more questions that have just rolled in. Are advocates free to have in the IEP meeting? And how can someone obtain an advocate to help with this process?
Well, protection and advocacy does provide does open cases. We have 3 teams. We're made up of the children youth team, an adult team, and an information referral team. CYT, the children youth team, CYT, supervisor determines which cases to open. You can always call us, and like for me, I always try to provide technical assistance if we can't be in an ARC. And I always remind parents, remember, you can have an ARC whenever you want to. So if something happens in an ARC, get upset, this is an emotional time, take a break, and you need to step out and get clarification. I always recommend doing that. And we, P&A, and I think we've given our publications included, our links to our publications are included in the website, in this PowerPoint presentation. And I always recommend bringing in the publications.
And at Kentucky SPIN, we do not attend meetings with families, but we are here to help support and prepare families to go in and effectively advocate for their students and their students' rights. So we are always here to help support whether you're a parent or a caregiver, or maybe you're a provider also working with that family. The next question we have is, with the manifestation, do minutes missed from the Gen Ed classroom count towards the time as they are in education minutes? Like multiple times a day is sent to the office or in school suspension?
And I think I saw a KDE interpretation of this a couple of years ago that they said it could. So I would recommend that if your child is consistently sent to the office, you point that out in the ARC. First document it that, yes, he got sent to the ARC. He got sent to the office today. This is umpteenth time. He's missed so many minutes. And then go into the ARC, because you can file a state complaint. Anyone can file a state complaint if you want to with the Kentucky Department of Education if they're violating your rights. You can also request mediation if you disagree with if you and the school disagree on an issue. The school has to agree to that. To mediation.
Thank you, Whitney. Someone had put in the chat that a child was sent home in their backpack with an established 504 plan in their take-home folder. And Rhonda has also suggested that the parent or caregiver request a 504 meeting so that the ARC team can come together to review and update that plan so that it is developed appropriately for that student's needs.
Yes.
Can I insert something here? Sorry, this is what Rhonda does when she's going to say something. She just comes off camera. So, so I just wanted to say I don't know if we have mostly parents or professionals on today, but at Kentucky SPIN, these are the things that we work with every day, all day long, and it is a really hard, troubling water to navigate. The one thing that I want to say, and I think Whitney has hit it pretty hard on the head. It is just really important that whatever is going on, that the parent has everything documented, right? Before everything we want to do in collaboration to the maximum extent possible, because all we want is for that child to be successful in school. But before we can go into meetings or and ask for help and review things, we need to make sure that we have all of our I's dotted, our T's crossed, our boxes checked. We need to make sure that everything that we are feeling is what is actually happening. Because when it comes to our child with a disability, I think most of us can say we might be a little sensitive. We might be just a little bit touchy.
Just a little.
So just make sure that everything you have or that you feel like you want to, call attention to or shine a light on, that you do have it documented, and know that it is not common knowledge what is federal law, what is state law, what is district policy and procedures. And that's what organizations like Kentucky SPIN and P&A are here to help you navigate. So I just really wanted to say that, because it can be so hard and it can roll so quickly. So the important thing to do is, as soon as you notice a pattern, that you make sure that you're getting the support that you need.
Well,
sorry, Whitney, I think I keep cutting you off.
No, that's fine. And I agree with you. Documentation is key. And I agree with everything you said. Not only for you, but I think because it is an emotional state, those meetings can be emotional. Documentation helps, so that when you go back after you've gone through the meeting, you can look through the minutes and say, okay, what happened? Do I need to make a change? Does this need to happen? I don't understand what happened here. Because it's emotional. And you want to make sure you're clear. And even when you go into the meetings, you can have the documents and say to the school, okay, this is what you said. I'm still kind of slightly confused. Can you explain that to me? And you may have to explain this to me, school, 300 other times, because understand, if this was your child, you would probably want it explained 300 other times too. It's kind of like
Okay.
them going to the doctor. That's not their area of expertise. So I would hope that anybody going to a doctor, if you've got questions, you ask. This is the school's area of expertise. Let them ask questions, and then if you've got follow-up questions, feel free to give KY-SPIN or P&A a call. I'll call us before the ARC too, or 504.
Right.
That's the other.
Whitney, we do have two final questions before we end. The first, my 7-year-old son was diagnosed with autism, ADHD, and ODD. He's a runner and he's a flight risk unless there is a single adult assigned to him in the gen ed classroom. Shouldn't his IEP fund an adult to sit with him as needed? Is my son able to receive a specific chaperone under his IEP to be able to join his gen ed classroom on a December field trip if he runs around on the field trip in October when he didn't have an assigned adult with him?
So ARC decisions are made by consensus. We go back to, okay, the service that you are asking for is an aid. So that's a whole question for the ARC. If he's eloping, there was a lot of information there too. So that's, and I'm just going to go through the process of how I would make those, I would clean up those facts and say, okay, this is why I'm asking for an aid. If you can't provide this, what services are you going to provide so that he can go this field trip? He should be able to go to the field trip. If they say we can't provide that service because he can't go on the field trip because we can't provide that service, that's a problem. And I would recommend that you contact the director of special education.
Thank you, Whitney. And our final question today is there any suggested documents that we should request from school in regards to behaviors for our own files?
And want to jump in, but I would, Kelly.
Yeah, data has to be being collected, especially if the IEP is appropriately given a true picture of where they are in their present levels, and there has been a goal and specially designed instruction developed. There has to be someone who is tracking those results, and I would ask for, because you should at least be getting periodic reports, at least concurrent with report cards. You can ask for periodic reports more frequently, especially if you're having a lot of behaviors, a lot of things that are going on. You can specifically in the IEP or ARC meeting come up with an agreement where you're getting that more frequently. Again, if we go back to looking at the functional behavior and the behavior intervention plan, it should be developed. And when that behavior intervention plan is done, there's going to be someone who is going to be tracking that, right? So there's going to be data being collected from that to see how successful it is. And again, just like with the goals or objectives that you have on your IEP, do the same with the behavior intervention plan. So anytime that you can get those reports and updates, that'll just help you be able to stay on top of where we're at and what's working and what's not working. And then it did say, did you say contact the Department of Education for my son that runs? So you can go, one of the things that you can do is, I would specifically, especially because for field trips, that is a school event. And so I would meet with the ARC. Again, what Whitney has said, that meet with the ARC and develop a plan, especially when it's extracurricular or field trips. They still have to have those same services and supports provided to them that's in their IEP. So making sure that I would request having a meeting, because we already know what occurred in October, right? And we don't want the same thing to occur in December on the field trip, right? So we need to have a safety or crisis plan in place so that him or her can participate along with their non-disabled peers in the field trip. But what are going to be the things that are in place? Is it going to be someone who is assigned to assist them so that they don't run off, right? Because on field trips, that's not a controlled environment. but it doesn't mean that children with disabilities shouldn't have the same opportunities to experience that. So I would meet with them and really update that so that that plan is in place and what's going to occur. Because especially also too, thinking back not just on field trips, making sure there's a crisis plan in the current IEP if they're at school, because they could run just the same at school. So what things are in place? So I know we're right at time, but I would encourage you to please reach out to us any way that we can assist. And I know there's an evaluation link in the chat, and Amber's going to be following up, and we'll send that link as well by email. But then we'll also send the PowerPoint. So Whitney, we greatly appreciate you being with us and partnering together on this.
Thank you.
I just wanted to add very quickly, if you do need a certificate of attendance for attending today, you can receive that by completing the evaluation link that will be sent out via email or through the chat function. And once that is completed, a certificate of attendance will automatically be emailed directly to you. And as Rhonda said, thank you so much, Whitney, for being with us. We appreciate all of the information that you shared. And we're so thankful to partner with P&A anytime that we can. And thank you for everyone who chose to spend your lunchtime with us. And we look forward to seeing you at our future events. Everyone take care.